Last year, a House Ethics Committee investigation found that there was substantial evidence, basically proving that former Representative Matt Gaetz had slept with a 17-year-old. Now, remember, this was that big DOJ case, big DOJ investigation into Matt Gaetz's conduct that was dropped eventually. And then the House Ethics Committee looked into it. And the Ethics Committee, they said, yeah, there's some evidence here. And that would have been in violation of Florida's statutory rape laws, of course, because you have to be 18 years old. A 17-year-old is considered underage and can't consent to having sex with an adult. The girl who Gaetz allegedly had sex with testified to the Ethics Committee and was a key witness in the investigation. But despite the investigation, Matt Gaetz was never charged with any crimes. And today, the girl is coming forward to share her story. In fact, she spoke to the New York Times. The details were actually provided to the New York Times by her lawyer in particular. And some of the information about the girl's background had recently been revealed through unsealed court documents. So the New York Times reached out to the lawyer specifically to verify the information. And here's what the lawyer said to the New York Times about the case, about the girl, and about this whole situation. The vulnerable circumstances most crime victims face are rarely known to the public. Although my client's circumstances were revealed outside of her control, I hope it helps for the public to see a fuller and more human picture of her than the press has reported on to date. So I think that's actually a really important perspective to keep in mind because oftentimes victims of rape or sexual assault also tend to get demonized. And that's why a lot of people who have been victimized in this way never come forward. So here's what the lawyer is stating. When this individual was just 17 years old and a junior in high school, her parents had recently divorced and her family just wasn't doing well, financially speaking. In fact, one of her parents was homeless, so the girl was living in and out of a homeless shelter. And at the same time, she desperately wanted to save in order to buy or afford braces to fix her teeth. In order to do so, at the time she was working at McDonald's. She began looking for other ways to make money and turned to a website that advertised itself as a sugar dating website that primarily connected older men and younger women seeking mutually beneficial relationships. Now, again, the girl was only 17 years old at the time, considered a minor. But on the website, she stated that she was 18 years old. So I'm gonna pause for a second because I think that detail, that element to this story is important. Because while the House Ethics Committee had said, yeah, there's substantial evidence proving that this sexual relationship happened, prosecuting it, I'm guessing, would be complicated and more difficult because of the fact that she stated she was 18 on this website. That's just my guess. I'm speculating here, but curious to hear or read what you all think about it. So through the website, she ends up meeting a guy by the name of Joel Greenberg, who was a close friend of Matt Gaetz. And over the course of several months, Greenberg repeatedly paid this girl to have sex. He also paid her extra money to take ecstasy before having sex. And before I continue, I just should have probably done this earlier. I want to give people a trigger warning because obviously this has to do with sexual assault and rape. And unfortunately, there are many victims like that in this country. So if you happen to be one of them, I just want to give you enough warning. Okay. So this is how Gaetz was involved, according to the reporting in the New York Times. On July 15th, 2017, Greenberg asked the girl and others to attend a party at the home of Chris Dorworth, a former Republican member of the Florida State House of Representatives, who at the time worked as a lobbyist for Ballard Partners, which is run by a major Trump fundraiser. The Ethics Committee heard testimony that the girl twice had sex with Gaetz that evening. For having sex with him twice, the girl was paid $400, according to testimony she gave to the Ethics Committee. And as we mentioned earlier, this individual was one of the key witnesses in the investigation that was carried out by the House Ethics Committee. Among the reasons prosecutors did not move forward with charges was their concern about whether she would be seen as a credible witness after being exposed to cross-examination by defense lawyers, according to people familiar with the investigation. So that's vague, right? Why did prosecutors feel that way? I would have liked a little more specificity in that regard, but nonetheless, Matt Gaetz has already responded to this New York Times story, saying, in response to questions about the girl, Gaetz said in a text message on Thursday, quote, "I never had sex with this person. This person threatened me with a lawsuit if I didn't pay her $2.3 million. She never sued me because her story is fiction." And look, guys, we are not capable of adjudicating this case, of investigating this case. And at this point, it's her word against his. But what I do know is that this story came out with the backdrop of the Epstein emails being leaked. And those emails have led to all sorts of revelations about people who either previously were in positions of power in the United States government or are currently in positions of power in the United States government. There are far too many questionable people with questionable character running the show here. And my question is, why is that? How is it that our government seems to attract some pretty immoral individuals? Now with Matt Gaetz, again, I don't have the capability or capacity to adjudicate whether or not this story is true, whether the allegations against him are true. But man, it's awfully specific. And when the House Ethics Committee comes out and says, yeah, there's evidence here, but we're not going to go forward with any effort to prosecute it or whatever. I mean, prosecuting cases can be difficult, even if the allegations are true, right? So I don't know specifically what led prosecutors or astray, what convinced prosecutors not to pursue this and take it to trial, but it is what it is. I think it's important for everyone to know her side of the story because so far we hadn't been able to hear her side of the story. We've only heard from Matt Gaetz' side of the story. And that's all I can really say about this. I feel it would be irresponsible for me to say anything else. Reading those details was gross though, really difficult to read that.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.